Just 1 second. Yeah. So we have been connected for more than 3 years, and we have done a lot of such sessions, workshop, and now it's a different thing, going from a physical sessions in colleges and industry sessions to a virtual session. So hi everyone. About myself, I have around 16 plus years of experience. I have worked mainly as an architect and manager for software across multiple software companies. I worked for Infosys, Verizon in US. I worked for Airtel Payments Bank, Paytm, Amazon. Uh, Done a lot of things. I have worked closely with core banking systems, which are the backbone of banks like HDFC, ICICI. I have looked at their systems. Then I have worked in CRM, so a lot of open source CRM products I've got implemented for Airtel. Right now I'm in Amazon, and we are creating platforms which support all the employees and associates of Amazon, which is more than 2 million across worldwide, for anything and everything related to their financial needs. So whether it is their salary processing, whether getting instant payments for the time they have already worked on, or any other queries they have, or their taxation. So we are creating a global platform here, leading a team here. So today we'll be focusing on how do we design and implement applications at scale. So I've seen scale in multiple companies or organizations that I've worked with, whether it was Airtel Payments Bank or Paytm or Amazon here. So today the focus of the agenda is how do you move from a API driven system to an event driven system, so that you are able to decouple your applications and you know create have a scalable architecture in place, and have independence to downscale or upscale a system and remove dependencies between various components. So should we start or should we wait?
So I think we can start now. So it's
Okay.
already 5 minutes past the start of the event. We can start. I will just like to introduce a little bit to the Amazon Web Services Group. So this is the Amazon Web Services Group, officially supported by Amazon, and we plan to do more such events. You can always reach out to me. I will be sharing my contact details and my social media details. You can reach out to me. Try to promote the event to more people. I think uh, AWS is something now we cannot live without. And my own experience of AWS started around 2011 when I started using AWS, and I think it is one of the best clouds. And over to Pankaj. Pankaj, tell how we can create a scalable architecture for our organization. So I've just started my own startup. Obviously, I would also like to have a scalable architecture for that organization. So over to Pankaj. And for Q&A, I would like to tell that you can ask, there is a Q&A panel, you can ask questions there. So Pankaj, would you like to answer the Q&A in between, or would you like to answer the Q&A after the...
I mean, I think in between will be better, because then there is a context and I can, go into depth of that context. I can spend few minutes at that point of time itself.
So you can ask question answers at any time in Q&A panel. I would prefer that, or you can ask in chat also.
Saurabh, can you allow screen sharing?
Is it not allowing you?
No.
There is no option actually for that.
Host has disabled participant screen sharing.
I think you entered as a
Oh, right.
I will make you host. I think उससे हो जाएगा.
Okay. Yes, I am the host. Now I can share. Yeah. Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen? Are you able to see?
I think थोड़ी सी पीछे से आवाज आ रही है तुम्हारे. If you can
just 1 second. Hello? Yeah. Are you able to see my screen? Saurabh?
Yeah.
Is the PPT?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So today we'll cover how do you design an application which is scalable using the serverless technologies and using the event-driven architecture or paradigm with AWS. So myself, Pankaj, as I said, I'm an SDM with Amazon. So this is the agenda we'll cover today. We'll talk about serverless components. We'll talk about SQS, SNS, Lambda. We'll have an overview of messaging services. We'll talk about events processing model. And then in the end, we'll do a very quick demo where we will create a Lambda, which will listen message from an SQS and then put it into a DB. So the DB has already been created, SQS has been created. We'll create a Lambda and see how we can listen to it, how it can listen to an SQS queue, read the message, and update our database. So let's start with AWS messaging services. And the first topic is Amazon SNS, simple notification service. Yeah. So what exactly is simple notification service? It's a publish subscribe messaging service. So if you look at this, right, there is a data and you are saying that there is an SNS topic which the data is being published to, and then SNS topic can push this data further to multiple consumers. So it could be a Lambda as a consumer, it could be an email, it could be another SQS. I'll talk about SQS in the next one. So what exactly SNS is? It's a push to subscriber model. So you send a message to SNS topic, and as soon as the message is returned to an SNS topic, you have multiple listeners to this SNS topics, and those listeners get that message. So it's a publish subscribe messaging service. It pushes the data to subscribers, and this is a topic. But you put the message into a topic, and its responsibility is to push it to everybody. And you can do a filtering as well during this push. So for example, let's talk about a real world scenario. You are going to a website and you order something. Now once you have done an order, there are a lot of things that needs to be done at the back end. The inventory management has to be told that now this is sold, reduce the inventory. You have to go to the shipping service to tell now this product needs to be dispatched. So what could happen here is the ordering service, let's assume this is ordering service will put that message in that topic, and this topic is subscribed by let's say a shipping service, inventory service, and let's say another account management service as well. So all these, or notification service, for example, if an order is placed, you want to send out a mail to the customer that your order has been placed, right? So what will happen is, as soon as you put this message into this SNS topic, all these four services which are not visible here will get that message, and then they can start processing whatever they need to do independently. So what we have actually done, if you think of this, right, if there was no SNS, what would have happened? The ordering service would have called APIs. It would have called an API of shipping service. It would have called an API of notification service. It would have called an API of inventory management service, saying that now I have got an order, please do your work. So what is that communication called? That is a synchronous communication. But this one, the one you see on the screen, is asynchronous communication. So what are the advantages of moving to this kind of architecture? So the biggest advantage is you are reducing coupling between the services. The services are not dependent on each other. You have the first service which is just pushing it into, it's doing its own work and just pushing the output to another topic, and then everybody or all the downstream services can independently process the message, do their processing, and do their scaling as well. I'll come to scaling when we talk about SQS. So any queries, what exactly SNS is, or shall I move forward? So if there are any questions, feel free to ask or just write it down. Okay, let's move forward. No questions. I see few things in chat. Is SNS something like a Kafka? Not exactly. Kafka is I would come to Kafka. Kafka is more like an SQS. It's not like an SNS. Okay, let me talk about SQS now. So Amazon simple queuing service. So somebody said Kafka. So Kafka is a queue, and Amazon simple queue service is also a queue. There are few differences between Kafka and Amazon SQS. I will come to it at the end of this session. One is a distributed queue, which you need to manage, and then you need to take care. There is a difference between how Kafka stores messages and how does it ensure you have a distributed messaging system. The responsibility of message is something producer needs to take care in Kafka, and hence it is highly scalable because you don't need to do state management in Kafka. Coming to SQS, so internally when SQS has been implemented by Amazon, it definitely has used few of these things which anyway Kafka is also using in its underlying engine. However, there are basic differences from a developer perspective. The major difference between SQS SQS and Kafka is that Kafka you have to manage yourself. You have to do a deployment. There is Amazon Kinesis, which is actually Amazon, Kafka service over Kafka, which is provided by Amazon, so that you don't need to manage the infra. But Amazon SQS is a serverless technology. You don't worry or you don't care what is happening behind the scene. So now let's see what is a queue service, and Amazon SQS is one example. Kafka is another example of queue service. So what happens in this case is the message that is produced by the, let's say, ordering application, it goes to an SQS queue and it persists here. So the difference between SNS and SQS is that SNS receives a message and sends it out. That's it. It does not persist the message. If there is a down, if the calling application is the subscriber is down, it put it into another queue if you have subscribed it. But SNS does not persist the message for a long duration. It's a temporary storage it has, and it uses that and then just flushes out the message. But SQS, you can define retention period up to 7 days is the default one. You can increase as well. It has a persistent store to keep your message. So the difference between an SQS and SNS is SNS is push, SQS is pull. So if a message has been written into SQS and there are subscribers who wants this message, for example, my notification service or let's say inventory management system or billing system, they need to poll the message. So what you do with an SQS, you have a poller which will poll this message and then do processing in this application. So if an order has been placed, a notification system needs to send out a notification to the customer. It will write a poller which will listen to this SQS queue, pull the message, and then do the processing they want to do. Another additional advantage. Yeah.
Pankaj, a little bit like अगर analytically if we want to think, and मैं थोड़ा सा इसको dumb down करके question पूछ रहा हूँ. So SNS is more like a SMS service where immediately something comes, and जैसे बैंक का होता है immediately it comes, and this is more like akin to WhatsApp message where once you open the WhatsApp it starts fetching the messages, something like that.
Correct. Right analogy. So it's mainly a poll versus push. So you pull it in SQS, as you said, like a WhatsApp message.
These messages are pushed in SNS in real time. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, real time.
Okay.
So if you see this, as soon as you write the message, just a second. Yeah, as soon as the data service writes the message to SNS topic, it is pushed to all the subscribers. Somebody asked, a message written by can be picked by multiple target. Yes, you could have a multiple subscriber to the same SNS topic. In my example also, there are multiple lambdas which are listening to the same SNS. Okay, let's come to the next one, which is exactly once and at least one delivery. Yeah. So now I have written a message to SQS. Now there are two constructs which are given by AWS for how do you implement or how do you configure your SQS. The first one is at least once, which is the by default one. So what happens is, let's say this is a Lambda which has subscribed to this SQS, and that, let's assume this Lambda or this service is your notification service, right? Now, what will happen? This notification service will go to this SQS, read the message in batch. So it's not one message it is being processed. Let's say there are five messages that are being picked up by this service or Lambda. Once they pick up these 5 messages, there is a possibility that there is an issue with processing at this service of these 5 messages. So what happens in that case is, uh, there is an error that is generated out here, and in the response we don't tell the SQS that we have read the message. So SQS will not delete that message. So the important part is, SQS will not delete the message till the time whoever is reading that message tells SQS back that I have read it. Once they say that I have read it, then only the message will be deleted. Otherwise, it will remain in the queue for till the time you have set the expiry of the message in your queue. Another important point here is, what is exactly once. So there are few applications where you want that a message should be processed only once and not more than once. So what do you do in that case? In that case, you have a syntax. You can configure your SQS to have a setting of exactly once. So in that case, as soon as the message is read, it is marked as read, and it is the responsibility of the reading application to ensure that they process it, and if they are not able to process it, they put it into DLQ. Now, next important topic we need to understand is visibility timeout. So what is visibility timeout? So visibility timeout is, once a poller is reading a message from a queue, in that case, it will get blocked for some duration, which is called visibility timeout, so that any other poller cannot read that. So what happens generally, if you have an application and you are reading from SQS queue, you will have a thread pool. Thread pool means you will have a set of pollers who will be going to the SQS. A thread will go to the SQS, pick up 5 messages, let's say batch size is 5, start processing it, and there is another thread which will go to the queue again and pick up the next set of 5 messages. Because we are talking about a scalable and highly throughput application, let's say millions of transactions are coming. So, and the batch size is 10. So if 1 million messages are coming to SQS, you need a way where you could have run multiple pollers in a thread pool environment. So first thread, you initiate that thread, it goes to SQS, polls 10 messages, processes it, but you need to ensure when the thread T1 is processing these 10 messages should not be visible to another thread. For that, you use visibility timeout. If thread T1 takes more than visibility timeout, what will happen is, thread will get timed out on the application side, and these messages will be visible again, so that another poller can pick up that message and do processing. So that is why it's at least once is done by default by SQS, and with exactly once needs specific settings, which needs to be done, which requires changes at your code side as well. Okay, a few questions. If multiple subscribers are polling the same queue, so you have multiple subscribers. Okay, they are polling. They will be able to process same message provided the visibility timeout is. They will be able to process the same message provided the visibility time. So they cannot process the same. When you say multiple subscribers, do you mean that there is one subscriber is listening to this SQS and another subscriber listening to the same SQS? Is it? Okay, got it. So you have put in two queues, right? So what happens is, there is an identification of app as well. So this application, okay, so let me take a real example. The real example in this case could be your ordering service writing to SQS, and then you have two consumers of that SQS, which is basically let's say notification service and inventory service. So inventory service and notification service are two services. For them, it is two different messages. So SQS keep tracks who is polling it. The two pollers within that service will not get duplicate will not get duplicate messages until visibility timeout is expired. That is the only case. One application get messages twice. If thread T1 read it and visibility timeout get expired, then it will be visible again. But for the two applications, they are two separate things. They have different domains, and it is identified by your subscription ID. So you have two different subscriptions ID. Next question from Shivani. Since SQS keep messages until it is processed successfully, so in case of any bug, error queue will keep on piling up. How to deal with the message keep on piling up, right? So there is something called as maximum number of tries. Maximum number of tries means, let's say this is an SQS and there is an application. It read this one, and then there was an error. Then the number of retries will go to 1. Then another poller picked it up, and that also tried to get this message, and then again that failed. You have something called as number of maximum retries. After maximum number of retries are exhausted, you want to clean up your queue and ensure you put it into somewhere else. And that is where Amazon gave a concept which is called dead letter queue. We call it DLQ, short form. So if there is a message which has been tried for X times, generally we set it to 3 or 5 is the standard we use. Then we put it into a DLQ. And then your normal processing is not impacted. And as a good software practice, you put alarms on DLQ. And once you get those alarms, you look at those messages, why they are not getting processed. Then you have various scripts, or I would say console. You can go to console and rectify that message which is in the DLQ. Maybe some validation is failing or some issue is there with the message. You correct that message, put it back to the main queue so that it can get processed again. Any questions till this point of time? Okay, let's move forward then. So I hope everybody is clear with the difference between an SNS and an SQS. And now the best thing which we should do. This is an idle architecture. This reduces load on this SQS as well, and SNS, and using SQS together to do this stuff. This is a standard architecture you will find in all event-driven architectures. If you're using AWS, you will have this. If you're not using AWS, if you're using Kafka and all, you may not have SNS topic. You can directly use Kafka as well. But again, it's a different way of implementing a similar thing. You need to think about scalability in a different perspective. There you talk about shards and all those things for scalability. Here, SNS and SQS does it. So what we have done now, think of it like an ordering system. Ordering system is putting it to an SNS. And now this SNS is pushing it to SQS. So if this SQS was not there, what would have happened is this function A, let's say this function A is your notification engine, and this function B is, let's say, your invoicing, or maybe the example I gave earlier, which was inventory. So if this is notification, this is inventory, and SQS is not there, this system needs to scale up. This is the load that is coming in the SNS. This is the order, you need to scale it up. But because now you have done a chaining and you have done the right event design, all these services can work at their own pace. Your inventory management, you would like to do it real time, can work at its own pace, but it should be real time. Your notification also should be real time. However, if there is something called as shipping service, right? Now you don't need to scale up shipping service too much to ensure that you are able to scale up the ordering. So give you an example. In your prime peak days, wherever there is a sale, whether it's Diwali sale or Independence Day sale, what happens is your order rate goes to 5x. So do I need to scale all my system 5x? No, I don't, because I have a distributed architecture. My ordering system can put on, can generate messages and put it onto that SQS. and it will be stored here, and I can process the warehouse, dispatch, and other services at my own pace. I don't need to scale up each services basis the ordering. So this is the main architecture that you should implement. You will see in all event driven system that you have an SNS and an SQS. Together they give you a way where you are able to decouple your applications. You can do independent scaling. You are not dependent on your upstream, what is the traffic flow, and you can handle your scalability independently. Any questions till this part of time? Okay, let's move forward. So now we'll see how do we use something similar in Lambdas. So right now we talked about you can write JSON to SNS. Yes, you can write JSON. You can put a message in a JSON format. So when you write to SNS, I will give you an example as well in our thing, the lab we have. You generally use JSON as an object and write it. JSON object to write to SNS, and then it can go to SQS. Okay, serverless event processing. So right now we talked about two serverless technologies, which is SNS and SQS. Now we'll talk about how do you have use serverless Lambda. So there are few more things which are available. You can search on internet for ECS Fargate. That is again a serverless technology. Okay, let me just talk for 2 minutes about what is serverless exactly means. So serverless technologies means uh, as a developer, you are not worried about infrastructure. You are not worried about scaling of the application. Scaling of the application, I mean scaling of the servers. You are not worried about CPU, RAM, what is the memory utilization, and you focus only on your code. We always also call it as a function as a service, where you are given a set of uh, environment where you can directly write your business logic. Lambda was the first product which came from a application development perspective. The first serverless is actually EC2 to a level where you just provision it. But then we have now gone into a function as a service. Lambda is the first one, and then the second one is ECS Fargate. You could maybe read about that as well. These two, Lambdas and ECS Fargate, these are the two things which are the future of AWS developments. So wherever AWS is being used, all architects are migrating towards using Lambdas and ECS Fargate. We are moving away from EC2. Even within Amazon, when we develop applications, we always do use ECS Fargate or Lambda.
So what Pankaj you are saying, agar I want to just clarify for people. So you are saying is that if you are creating a new application on cloud, so I can give you one example which we are doing in our own startup. So we are creating a educational, we are creating some educational games, and obviously will require server in the background. So what you are saying is that because we are starting from scratch, we should focus on serverless first, which is basically Lambda first instead of EC2. Because generally when I talk to developers, and obviously people prefer EC2, and like even to go to content management systems and all things, people prefer older things like WordPress, etc. But what you are saying, instead of that, we should think about Lambda first, and should not, in fact, there can be a scaled up system which does not have any EC2 instance, only Lambdas, SNS, SQS type of things.
Correct, Saurabh. So the biggest advantage of Lambdas and ECS is you pay as per you use. You don't need to pay a fixed cost of EC2 that you have provision for your application. So in EC2, you have modes. You can do spot mode is there. Then you have a fixed RI mode, and then you have on demand mode. Even that one is being taken care by AWS now. You write a Lambda, you get X amount of hits free to your Lambda. You create an ECS Fargate, you get X free, X API calls. Again, it depends on data transfer and CPU utilization your application is doing. You get it free. You don't need to pay anything upfront. That's biggest advantage. And then you don't need to manage and deploy applications the way you do it in a standard way. In a normal EC2, you get an EC2, you need to think about its security, and then you need to create a web server, deploy your application. So that is all taken care, and you should definitely go for ECS and Lambda. All applications which we have been developing last 1.5 years, we have not taken any EC2. We always use ECS and Lambdas
So,
to
so
answer that.
you believe that in future we would have large systems of like some of the use cases are banks, content management systems. Everything would be done using Lambda
Correct.
and Fargate instead of EC.
Right. Right. Okay. One question came: why we used SNS and not SQS? Yeah. Let me go back to that diagram. Yeah. So think of this like an ordering application. If we have to, if SNS was not there, what ordering application would have to do? And it would have to connect with this SQS, this SQS, and this SQS. So this publisher will actually be writing to multiple SQS of each application, which is not a good design. Why would ordering, and tomorrow, let's say another new applications comes up. So today, let's assume you are not generating tax invoice, a GST invoice, and tomorrow you bring up another application which is processing GST. It will has its own SQS. Then you would need to do changes in your ordering application to send that message to that queue as well. So it is always uh, best practice where you have a publisher, it puts into an SNS, and then you have multiple subscribers, and then it's very easy to add another SQS here, just listening to this SNS topic. So your entire pipeline doesn't change, your code doesn't change, you just add a new leg. So that's why we use SNS and SQS together. Okay, let's move to Lambdas. So as I said, Lambdas started the function as a service programming paradigm, and now there are three ways Lambdas work. The first one is synchronous. So this is again standard thing used across AWS technology. So what you'll do, you will have an Amazon API gateway, which will get the request from your front end application. Let's say you have a React application running somewhere in CloudFront, and on the browser it executes and it calls an API via Amazon API gateway. This is a standard gateway used by Amazon, provided by AWS. You might have heard of open source API gateway like Kong and all. So it's a AWS offering for a similar thing. API gateway takes care of authentication, authorization, or basic orchestration, throttling, and other stuffs. So you get the data from an API gateway, your API hits your service, and then let's say this service can directly call a Lambda. Sorry, my bad. It's not a service. So you have an API which is /order, and behind an API gateway, you have a Lambda which processes, get this request and do some kind of checks and all. So this is a synchronous communication where Lambda is directly integrated behind your API gateway and is serving your user traffic. There were some, I would say, concerns raised earlier, which was related to, you can search on internet as well about cold startup time of Lambda. When you are initializing a Lambda, it takes up some time, specifically if Lambdas are written in Java. That is resolved to a large extent. Python is the language people generally prefer for Lambda because the performance is really good, because Java has its own overheads of starting up the. So what exactly is Lambda? It's actually something, piece of code lying somewhere. When you call the API, it gets invoked and is ready to serve your request. So that startup time is more for a Java based application, if Java based Lambda, rather than a Python based, because Python is an interpreted and Java it gets compiled and it needs to load libraries. So if you are planning for this kind of communication and you have to write a Lambda, I would suggest writing it in Python, because as a technology, Python gives you that flexibility and performance that you should have if you are serving the real-time traffic. So this is first mode, synchronous. The second is asynchronous. So asynchronous, so this example, for example, SNS is there, right? And then what I want is, whenever, let's say an order is placed, I have a very simple Lambda, which sends out notification, and I've not used SQS right now. So what I could do, I could have a Lambda listening to SNS, and it will directly get the notification, get invoked, and do something in the downstream. So this is an asynchronous communication where SNS is calling Lambda or invoking Lambda whenever it's receiving an event. The another use case is S3. So Amazon S3 is a standard way to store files, simple storage, Amazon simple storage. So this again is very similar to SNS. You get an S3 file, there is a notification you can configure, and that notification goes to Lambda. The next one is poll based. This is the most important one, and this is used across various applications where you have an SQS, and whenever something some message is done on SQS, Lambda just polls through SQS, and then it invokes its own function and then do it. So let's go into the next slide. So this is SNS to Lambda. So in SNS to Lambda, you put a message, there is a Lambda, and then you have 3 Lambdas which are registered to this message, to this SNS subscription. Function A can get it, function B can both will get it. And the third one, let's say Lambda C has a subscription filter policy. So what this subscription filter policy says is, if you have an SNS and you are subscribing to that SNS as any entity, whether you are an SQS or whether you are a function or a Lambda, you could say what kind of messages I need and what I need to drop off. For example, if I say that if a message is coming for India, this Lambda does not need it. So I could have a subscription filter policy that if the message order country code is India, drop it, so that message will never reach this function. And so this will be used somewhere if you're creating a worldwide application and you have something which is specific only for one geo, or something which are not available in one geo, you will use this subscription filter policy. It saves a lot of time at your application side, because you just drop the message at that point of time itself. You don't need to read it, you don't need to process it. So these filter policies you can apply on your SNS directly at the time of subscription. Then let's look at this. So what will happen in this case? There is no queue here, right? So what will happen is, if the messages are coming, and I talked about visibility timeout, so there is an internal queue which Lambda provides. So if the messages are coming, Lambda has an internal queue, and then there is a poller within the Lambda which is being used to invoke your internal Lambdas. So for example, if 10 messages come and I need to process those 10 messages, there is an internal poller which will keep on getting these messages and invoking these functions. So this is something that Lambda internally does if you are using a SNS. If you are using an SQS, then how does it changes? In SQS, we call it long poll, because SQS itself has a queue and the messages are persisted here. So in this case, there is a concept of batch, and that so let's say there are 4 messages. So what will happen is, poller will first read 3. Let's say the batch size I say is 3, and there are 4 messages already in the queue. So first, this internal poller will read these 3 messages. It will give these 3 messages to, let's say, first poller. It has given first Lambda. It created a Lambda. It gave 3 messages to this Lambda, right? And then there is another. If you see, there is another message left. What will happen in this case is, it will open another instance of the same function and then give the 4th message to this one. And then what will happen in this case is, so let's say this 3 messages have been processed by this Lambda. As soon as these 3 messages are processed, Lambda poller will tell back to the queue that I have processed these messages, please delete these 3 messages from the queue. Let's take a scenario. Any questions till this point of time? So what will happen is, these three messages have been deleted because they have been processed. Let's say that this lambda, which was processing one message, has it has not been able to process it. So what will happen in this case? In this case, there is something called as visibility timeout. So you see a timer here. It's basically a visibility timeout. And once this visibility timeout expires, because this guy was not able to process this, it will get visible again. And the next next time this one message can be picked up, and this lambda can process it. But one important thing that happens here is receive count. So somebody was asking what happens if a lambda is able to trying to process a message and it fails again and again. So what happens in this case? Receive count is increases every time. And then you could have a rule that if receive count is more than 3 or 5, you configure a DLQ and then put the message into the DLQ. Any questions till now, or we should go for the lab? Okay, let's start with the lab. So what we'll do in the lab today? So we'll create a lambda function. So the focus is creating a lambda function which will read a message from an SQS and put it into a database. So we are using a DynamoDB table, which is DynamoDB database, which is already created for this lab. I've already created it. Message table is there in that database. I will just show you. Then there is the SQS, which is already created. What we will do is we will create a lambda in this lab, which will listen to this SQS, and that lambda has a code in Python which will put data into this database. And then we'll have an EC2 instance. We'll write a Python script which will push messages to this queue. So what we'll see is when these messages are pushed to this queue, this lambda and this lambda is subscribed to this queue. So it will poll these messages in batch, and then it will put it into the message table. This is what we will do. There are few questions. What is the distribution fashion on SQS? It is so yes. So good point. There are two types of queues. There is a FIFO queue and there is a standard queue. So FIFO queue maintains the ordering, and standard queue is I would say it's not round robin. I mean, it's still FIFO, but it doesn't guarantee it FIFO. So whatever comes in goes out first. I mean, standard queue, right? But it doesn't guarantees you FIFO. What does it mean? Let me go back to this slide and try to explain this. Let's look at this one, right? Let's say there were 4 messages here. 3 were being read by this and 1 was being read by this. If it is a normal queue, it is quite possible that these 3 messages, one of these 3 messages can fail to get processed, and then you have processed the 4th message here. So it is not guaranteeing you. However, if it is a FIFO queue, it will guarantee that you process in the order it comes. So I assume you are able to understand that if you are putting, so right now this is stateless. It doesn't need to know who is doing what, right? It just need to know I have given a message to a queue to a lambda, and then that lambda is processing if it's stateless. But in case of FIFO, it needs to know which message is being processed at this point of time. It cannot give the next batch till the time old batch gets completed or gets visibility timeout. So it puts loads on this FIFO queue, and hence if you should not design applications which require FIFO, because it puts loads on the scalability of FIFO queue. And if you are running a million TPS kind of application, FIFO will not work. Question: is there a limit to how many instances a particular lambda spin up? Yes, there is a limit. I am not aware of the number right now, but there is definitely a limit. If that happens, then what happens? There is something called as lambda throttling. So once this poller, which you see, it tries to spin up more lambdas and it gets throttled. You remember there was a queue that I showed here within the lambda as well in one of my earlier diagram. This one internal queue. So it keeps the message there in that case. there is definitely a limit of each and every resources. If you have a lot of lambdas that needs to be spin off, you need to see. And again, if you think that whatever you are processing is going to take this much of time, then you go from lambda to ECS. This is another design decision you take based on the TPS requirement, that if I have to do this much of processing, lambdas will be able to do it. But if you think that, let's say I give an example, let's say you have to process a file which has 1 million records, right? And you want to process it in 2 minutes and then load it memory and do it, right? So lambda is not the right solve, because you are getting a lot of records and you cannot invoke or spin so many lambda. Okay. Does lambda also has some kind of DLQ? So lambda directly does not have, but if you are integrated with SQS, then you can put it here. You can define a DLQ of this, but I am not sure, Vinod. Maybe there is a way to uh, configure in Lambda also dead letter queue. I will check and get back. I think there is a mechanism where I can say that if I have an exception, I just directly put it to a DLQ. Okay. Any further question before we go to the lab? So this is what we are going to do for the lab. And let me just open.
Start the lab because we have 10 minutes left. So maybe
Okay,
5
fine.
minutes we can take. But
fine. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'll log into the lab. So I'm logging to a AWS console. Yeah. So I have already created a database. So I'll directly go to database. I'll just copy paste so that we can open multiple things. You're able to see my screen, right?
yes.
Right. So I created this lab some time ago itself. So that is why you will already have data here. Let me try to delete the data. Okay, it might take, it will delete 100 by 100 only. Okay, I think it is done. No, it's not. Actually, I was testing just before the lab, so it has added. Fine, that's fine. I'll just show you the new messages that are coming to this table. So this is a table which is already created with the name message. Then I'll show you the SQS which is already created here. And we'll create a Lambda in this session. I'll delete the existing Lambda and we'll recreate it. So this is a queue which has been created SQS. And if you look at this subscriptions, you will see a Lambda which is already subscribed to this. Do you see this Lambda? And then I will open. I'm not familiar that much with Zoom. How do you hide this? Okay.
You can move that panel. वो जो Zoom वाला panel हमें नहीं दिख रहा. You would be seeing it. You can move it.
Yeah, but कहीं पे space भी होना चाहिए. Okay. Okay, so let me now open Lambda. So there is a DynamoDB which has a table which is already created. There's an SQS which has a Lambda trigger subscription. So I'll delete right now the Lambda which I had created. Let me just delete it and we'll create it again. And I've created it, deleted this, and let's go to SQS. And do you see no subscription now? Sorry. Okay, this is still showing. Let me delete this subscription. I think it should get deleted. SQS DynamoDB. Yeah. So I've deleted the subscription as well. Now what I'm going to do is in this lab is I will create a Lambda and then we'll have a Python code which will write whatever data is coming to this Lambda into the database. So how do I create a Lambda is I click on create. Let's say it Lambda SQS DB. I'll use Python code and I go to this one. I create a new role with basic Lambda and I just say create function. So what I've done is I've created a very simple Lambda. Now what I'll do, I already have a code. I will just copy paste that code. And this is what you see once you create a Lambda. So it is not having any trigger. It is not having any destination. Destination we will not use right now. We'll just put code into this, which will connect to database. So, and what you get a code, test, monitor, configuration, alias, and version. So you get a default Lambda function.function.python. So what I'll do, I'll remove this code and put my own code, and we'll just go through quickly with the code as well. So this is the code. So what I'm doing is I have a environment variable which is DynamoDB table. Here we will put the name of the table in environment variable. I'm creating a connection with DynamoDB, and then I am reading that messages. So what will happen is this Lambda will be called with an event and a context. I am getting the messages, whatever I'm getting in the context. I am printing it and then I am putting it into the DynamoDB, and whatever response I am getting, I am putting into the log. So what I'll do is I'll save this, and I need to specify the table name. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to deploy it, and then I'll go to configuration and add. I'll go and add an environment variable. I'll go to configuration and I'll go to environment variable and add an environment variable. And the table name we had was message. So I'll add a value message. I'll say save. So this is added. My code, I will just recheck whether the code is there. Yes, the code is there. Now, once we create any resource in AWS, it needs to have relevant permissions to do anything. Now, in this case, I have just created a Lambda and I have written some code which is connecting to reading it, the input stream, getting the data and writing to database, but I have not set any permissions. So for that, I need to go to IAM. So I'll go to IAM. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. This is the tool where you manage all your access controls between various components. With even I logging into this also is in IAM. I have a role basis which only I can log in. So when we were creating a Lambda, we selected a default IAM role or a new IAM role we created, and we created this one. SQS DynamoDB is what we created. This is what we created. So I'll just
for every service you are creating a Lambda IAM role.
Right. Every service should have its own IAM role. So I'll click on it. This is something that we created some time back. No, hold on. Creation time is, I think this is the one I created earlier. This one we created some time back. When we were creating the Lambda, we created this. And if you look at the policies, it has a very basic policy of just logging, nothing else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach policies. And what policies I'm going to attach is I'm going to attach DynamoDB full access. So right now I'm giving full access, but ideally in your production environment, you should see what all policies you need, whether you only need read only, whether you need execution, or whether you need Lambda invocation. So right now I'm writing everything. So this last policy is if you want to invoke a Lambda basis DynamoDB stream. So I'm giving a full access right now. And let me just, where is the attach button? Okay, I'm getting confused. Yeah. So this I have attached. And the second policy we need to attach is SQS. So I'm giving a full SQS. Ideally, you could do read only as well. So I've attached both the policies to this role. And now what we need to do is, so what we have done right now we have created a Lambda, which is this. And we have given access to this Lambda to connect to database and read from SQS. Now we need to add a trigger, and let's add a trigger. And we will add a SQS trigger. Whenever a message comes to SQS, here we write the SQS name. So message is our SQS name. Batch size we just configure, maximum is 10. So this is number of messages that it will be pick up at one go. I click on add, and now this is done. So what we have done, if I go back to my PPT, are you guys able to see my PPT?
We are able to see the AWS console, not PPT.
Okay. Let me share, new share. Now you're able to see?
Now we can.
Yeah. So what we did, we had an SQS with the messages name. We had a database with the messages name. We created a Lambda function. We gave a role. We created a default IAM role, and then to this IAM role, we attach two policies. We attach a policy to write to database and read from queue. And now this is done. Now what we need to do, we need to test it, because we have written a policy which will read from this, because we added a trigger. We just need to test it. So what we'll do is I will go to a EC2. So I have an EC2 instance with me, which I've already created and pre-configured. When I say pre-configured, I have updated it to the latest Python version. I have installed two packages which are basically for generating a random string. So I'll just log into that. Just a second, let me share my screen again. Looks like my password is not working. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen with the terminal? Are you able to see the terminal? Aropanka cloud user. Saurabh? Saurabh, are you speaking on mute? Yes, perfect. Okay, okay. Thank you, guys. So, yeah, I said, right, there is the Python script, send message.python. So what I'll do is I will just execute that Python script, and I can show you the Python script as well, what it is doing. So what this Python script is doing. Very simple Python script. Here are the imports. Then it is taking the argument, it's taking the queue name, it's taking the interval, and then for message and it's logging the message and all. So what it is doing is it basic logging it's doing. Then it's creating a BOTO client. This is a client that this is a client connector which you use to connect to an SQS. You're creating a client and then you're passing the queue name, you're getting a queue URL, and then you are creating a dynamic message using fake.txt. It's a library which is giving you messages, random generated messages, and then you are just pushing that message to the queue, and then you are sleeping for a interval. So you are doing a delay. So what I do is I send these messages, and now this is sending messages to this queue. Now what we should do, we should go back to the AWS console, and let's look at our metrics. Let's look at the metrics of which we can start with SQS. Let's look at SQS metrics. So SQS metrics, we can start with monitoring, and here you're able to see my AWS console, correct?
Yeah.
Not able to see AWS. Okay, let me just share it. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So what I am doing is I am showing you the dashboard of SQS. The messages. Hold on, my mouse. Yeah, now it's back. So I'm showing you the CloudWatch metrics for AWS SQS, and I put it as custom last 5 minutes. So if you see this metrics, right? Look at number of messages received in last 5 minutes. You using these messages count, number of messages deleted, number of messages received. You're able to see these metrics, which effectively means whatever script I'm running is able to is sending these messages to this SQS. Now what is happening after this SQS? This Lambda gets invoked. So you send message to SQS, Lambda gets invoked. So let's monitor the Lambda. And let's look at Lambda dashboard for last, let's say 5 minutes. And auto refresh, 10 seconds, right? So you look at success rate, 100% success rate. This is in percentage. This is, it tells you the time it is taking in milliseconds, and this is number of invocations. So you see a jump in invocation. So what is happening? SQS is keep on getting messages. Lambda is reading it, and you see these graphs going ahead. And then let's go to DynamoDB. So if you see this item tables, it will keep on getting new records. Uh, the one way to do is again go to metrics and see. Okay, here I don't think I can do last few minutes. Read capacity. Yeah, you see writes. Do you see writes here? Last 2 minutes. So messages are getting returned to the database. So this is how you create a very basic event-driven system where you have segregated your applications, you have segregated your databases, and you have put in queues in between to ensure that there is no tight coupling between various applications. Any questions so far?
So I think we can just take one or two questions and we can
Sure. Yeah.
close the session. So any questions? So I think we don't have any questions now, no more questions. So Pankaj, it was nice to have this session with you. I learned a lot. And I think the future is serverless, as you have already shown that even Amazon is going towards serverless, because there is a thinking that EC2 and other server full processes are required for large systems or scaling. I think what you have shown is that now we can build large systems which are relatively decoupled, and we can use purely serverless technologies for that. I think that is a good thing. So Pankaj, I have a small question before we end.
Mhm.
So do you think the future is purely serverless, or if there is a developer who is doing so I have been running Amazon Web Services group for many years. So what I've realized is that many developers only specialize in a few services,
Mhm.
and obviously everybody knows about EC2. So what would you suggest? So future would be serverless. So any person who is there in AWS, he should focus now on things like DynamoDB, Lambda, all these queues, etc., more than EC2 and the SQL databases which people were earlier using. Is that the future, or like the earlier thing will also remain and this will also remain?
So, so the future is definitely serverless. And why do I say that? See, if you do take an EC2, I'll give a very simple example. If you take an EC2, you need to do lot of overhead of maintaining your services. For example, you need to install either MySQL or Postgres or any other database or Oracle for that matter. If you are doing that, you are taking a lot of pain on yourself. Is it worth the effort and time? Right now, we are living in a world where the core focus is how do you scale up fast and cheap. So the easiest way is, because all the serverless is pay as you go. I mean, EC2 is also pay as you go, but you still have a fixed cost. Correct? You still need to pay $10 for R5X large or whatever is that cost of that EC2. In serverless, you don't even pay for that. So let's say you create a startup and you only use Lambdas and SNS, SQS, and DynamoDB. If there is, let's say, 2 months, 1 month period where, or maybe night, you don't have traffic, right? You don't pay for it. That's point number one. Point number two, you don't need to manage the infra at all. You don't need to worry about security. You don't need to worry about encryption. You don't need to worry about backups. All those things are taken out. So you actually focus on your core business logic. You don't even focus on technology. You focus on, this is the data I need to store. This is an API I need to give. You work on your contracts and functional programming, not on tech. That's the biggest help I see of
Somebody is
serverless.
asking a question. So there is a question by Gaurav that for stable systems like banking, because like I also had this perception that for things like banking or very important services, is serverless like the right thing?
Lambda may not be the right thing, but ECS Fargate is. Lambda, okay, okay. Let's say we
Can
say
you tell a
that.
little bit about the difference between Lambda and ECS Fargate?
Mhm. So Lambda is on the runtime. You are putting a small piece of code and it is warming up and doing it. ECS Fargate is slightly different. ECS Fargate is, it is built on top of EC2. So think of it. You say that I will build an ECS Fargate and deploy it. So the availability that ECS Fargate guarantees is more. Now I'll come back to the earlier question you asked about banking. See, in banking also, you will have multiple types of services. For example, if it's a fund transfer service, you need an API. You need an API which gives you real-time response at that point of time. You need an API for your balance inquiry. For that, use something like an ECS Fargate. But for notification, sending out SMS to customers, sending out emails, doing your backend processing, doing those updates at the backend. Lots of things happens in banking. You create invoices, you create GSTs, you create charges, you put on limits. All those things you could still do with Lambdas. So I'm saying that serverless is the way to go for developing anything and everything on AWS. The another big advantage that we miss out is the upgrade of technology. If you're doing your custom deployment, let's say you have a custom RDS database, you need to worry about the patching, you need to worry about upgrade, you need to think about if that support is not available now. But with AWS serverless, that is not the case. So you're on mute, Saurabh, I think.
I think you answered the question. So I think Dheeraj has asked a question. Can you see, Pankaj?
Okay, let me just see. Yeah. There is some curve dev has to go through. Limited storage, IAM for everything, managing packages on Lambda have to be aware of. These are blocking point problems. I mean, just saying any suggestion how for new devs in this context, right? So there is something called as already available in AWS, which is called service startup. There are startup kits created by AWS so that you can do all this setup at one go. I mean, there are few projects running which again are not mature at this point of time, but there is a plan that with, okay, let me ask you this. I'm not sure how many of you have worked on Magento kind of platforms. You go and you just click next, next, next. It just asks you a few things and your website is up, right? Those kind of things are available. So the vision is there that you have a very simple next, next, next thing, and you are able to do everything. Lightsail is superb here in this context. Yeah, I have not gone too much into depth of Lightsail, but there are few things. And if you get task stuck somewhere, so let's take one by one. Limited storage. When you say limited storage, can you explain more? I mean, you don't get data that you could put storage of data. That, I mean, you're talking about database storage. Maybe we can open the call for everybody. Okay, package size on Lambda. I agree, Dheeraj. That's a limitation. That's why I said Lambda, you don't use it for your complex application. For that, go for ECS Fargate. IAM for everything is by choice. You could decide that I will have common IAM roles. I will reuse IAM roles across. So that is up to a developer. But the recommendation is, okay, I'll tell you why that recommendation is. The recommendation is that each and every component should have its own IAM role and then do a manage. Why? From where it came is it came from the Amazon philosophy of two pizza team, that you create something and you grow so big that you cannot have 10 or 100 developers manage that. So you start with an ordering application, and let's say you put 100 resources of AWS. You have 10-15 databases for a simple ordering application, 15-20 applications doing different work in microservices mode. But then you grow to a so large scale, these independent services itself become platform. Your notification engine itself become platform. So what happens in that case? If you have one IAM role for everything, the problem is, once you want to give it to different teams, you will spend a lot of time in figuring out which role should be there with which service, what is the responsibility of the service, which we call it tenet. So if you start from right and at the granular level, I agree, it looks like an overhead that you have to do it, but it's again clicks only, right? I mean, it's not something that you have to code. So suggestion is to use IAM for everything. It helps in clear segregation of responsibilities, how the access is happening, and it's easy to debug when you scale up to 10x or 100x. Managing packages on Lambda, I agree. As I said, it is to be used for simple, I would say simple business logics and not complicated platforms development. Have to be aware about each service. Again, it's a learning curve. Even I am not aware of, I would say I'm aware of only 7 to 10 AWS services, even when I am using it on a day-to-day basis in my projects. I am aware of only 7 to 10 things. There are 100 plus services. Nobody and no one is expected. Even the AWS solution architects, whoever is selling it, only those people may know. Even the development team of EC2 may not know about a service which is launched by some other team in AWS. So it is okay not to be aware of it. But as you grow, as you have a problem, for example, you want something for monitoring, you want something for analytics, quick site report, for example, right? So when you get a problem, just search for it. Slowly you will get used to it, that how do you use AWS tools. Okay, using Elastic. Yeah.
One last question of Manish Rao. I think we don't have much time now.
Right.
Using elastic file storage is a good option with Lambda to cover to overcome the limited storage side.
Oh, EFS with Lambda, I haven't tried, Manish. Neither I've gone into depth of this. I need to check. Maybe I can give my ID, and maybe you can give your ID, and I'll revert to you on this one.
Okay, so we had a nice session. I learned a lot. I think everybody learned a lot. Thanks, Pankaj, and hoping to have more sessions with you in future.
Definitely. Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.